hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Corgi Town USA podcast. I'm Candy Kemp. In my lap is Chuckles, the tricolored corgi. He is the spokescorg for Corgi Town USA and the president of the Corgi Committee. And also with us,
I'm Kat Cohen, and with me on the floor are Digby. He is a Pembroke Welsh and a cardigan corgi with beautiful blue and brown merle eyes, and also honorary corgi Wigan. Wigan is an Australian cattle dog, but for the purposes of this show, he becomes a corgi.
He's our honorary corgi.
That's right.
So we had a couple weeks ago, we had Kimberly with Good Vibes Dogtography. And she took some amazing photos of the Corgi Committee.
Yes.
And really made little Mortimer shine like a star. Usually Chuckles is the pup assistant. He's like, camera, I'm ready. But he was all about the ball that day. And Mortimer stepped up to the plate.
And yes, and Mortimer was all ready
totally
for my close up.
Totally GQ. But she gave us some great tips on photographing your pet and taking good pet pictures and what she recommends and kind of some of her process. And so that got me to thinking about videos because we've been on TikTok.
We've
been having a lot of fun with that.
Yes.
And then you kind of see the thing with TikTok is it's all for anybody who has the app. So you've got anybody from novice to expert. And please excuse Digby in the background. This is a Corgi podcast. Every now and then you'll hear a Corgi opinion or two.
Yeah.
But you see on TikTok, you see just different kind of varying degrees of people who are good at video and not good at video. And one of my favorite stories to tell is when I hired someone for a while to handle my social media. You could tell that my social media got much better than it is when I do it. But that person tells me, well, you're not growing your followers because you have mediocre photos on your. And I was like, well, I know I'm not a photographer. That's why I need help. So anyway, we meet these people who are kind of awesome at this and give us not only good tips on how to do things ourselves, but also just to hire them and let them do it as well.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, if you're watching, we have a YouTube channel. So we appreciate you liking and subscribing. And most of its content is the Corgi Town podcast, but we are working on getting some better videos on our site. But it got me to thinking, if we're doing this, I have a friend named Harrison who is a film director. And I feel like we should bring him on and talk about this.
I think so.
Let's bring him on. Hi, Harrison.
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, not so bad. How are you now?
Good. We're good. We're covered in dog fur.
Right.
Oh,
Which means we're fabulous.
Which means we're fabulous. It's our favorite accessory.
That's right.
So tell us, how long, Harrison, have you been a filmmaker?
Well, I've been making short films since I was in high school, and that sort of naturally progressed to go into film school and just getting better at what I do. So I made a whole lot of mistakes making short films with a bunch of friends in high school, and that sort of translated over to a more successful, lucrative career as a filmmaker today.
Well, you hear Kevin Smith talk about that, how he made Clerks on credit cards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, his story is pretty legendary.
Yeah, I mean, talking about just sort of that evolution. And I imagine, mistakes are part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we learn.
Yeah, I'm still making lots of mistakes with Corgi Town. Most of them is Kat and her opinions. I mean, I kid a little bit. No, I think making mistakes are part of that and in any process. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. And for those listening, you can look at Harrison's work. He does awesome work with films. It's YouTube Navajo Joe Films. And you have a lot of content on your page. I mean, you have years of your movies.
Yeah. On that channel, I kind of created that channel specifically for when I was starting to be a better filmmaker. At least that's what I thought back then. So the content starts somewhere around my senior year in high school on to 2 months ago when I released another project of mine. So, but yeah, it's a little under 100 videos, but we're getting to that 100th video.
Yeah, but I mean, anybody who's if you're listening, you can go to his page. But if you're watching too, I mean, you can binge watch. You can binge watch the Navajo Joe film series because there's 100 of them on there.
Yeah, you burn a few hours.
So how did shooting and editing, that whole process? I can tell you, I've been doing more of that with this podcast. I've got it set up. You were talking about making mistakes and the evolution of kind of learning what to do. And to
Right.
me, video editing it's a total time suck. You think,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm going to sit down for 2 hours and I'm going to cut and edit this." No, 6 hours later I'm like, "Okay, I'm supposed to be done. What happened?" Even if it's simple, somehow what's simple ends up being not simple.
That's
And
right.
that's when things are working correctly. Even so, in true candy fashion, I'm taking a long road to a simple thought here. But what's how do you think like the editing, filming, editing, like the entire process that's involved in that? How do you feel like that made you a better filmmaker? And if so, how so?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I sort of became like inadvertently became my own teacher because I say I started making short films like in high school. I say that because I that's when I was digitally editing my films. I would shoot on mini DV tape and capture them digitally and bring them into Windows Movie Maker and start doing it that way. But before that, before I had access to a computer power, back then, I would actually edit in camera on a high 8 camera. So I would shoot
Yeah.
the project, cut, and pretty much just edit in the camera in real time. So I didn't have to edit it myself. So, well, in a way, I was, but doing that for like through middle school to when I started editing digitally in high school, I kind of inadvertently kind of taught myself how to edit in camera, and that sort of translated easily to digital. And then that way, so then obviously my process was adapted to editing in a non-linear editing system, and suddenly I just shot my films the way I would edit them before even editing. I would edit in camera, shoot it, and now that I'm shooting digitally, I would shoot what I need, and the editing just sort of sprung together because I would be the one to edit and shoot it, so it all just sort of fell into place. It's not a traditional way to learn editing, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like that whole process of if you learn to shoot on 35 millimeter photography, then it kind of translates easier to shooting digitally because you made all your mistakes on film and you it pretty much just goes easily to the digital photography.
Right.
So
Yeah.
mhm.
Are one of those processes more tedious than the other?
It's kind of hard to say because back then it was just the only way I could edit. It was just editing while shooting, and
Right.
then it kind of forced me to learn how to edit. So
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't take that route, but I was like 12, 13. So it's not like I didn't have access to, because back then, God, what were mini DV cameras were like 300, $400 back then or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because that was about 2002, 2001 or something.
You gave yourself the baptism by fire. I
Yeah,
want
basically.
I want to learn to do this. Okay, I'm doing it.
Exactly.
Which sometimes is the best way to learn.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But you went to school. Did you go to school specifically for
Yes,
shooting
yes.
films? Yeah, I thought you
Yeah,
did.
no, yeah. Right after high school, I took like a little year hiatus, which is what I like to call my golden age of filmmaking, because that's when I was out of school, didn't have any responsibilities, and just created for like a year. And then I said, okay, all right. So I think I can learn more. So I ended up attending a now defunct college called Collins College in
Yep.
Tempe. It closed
I
a couple
used to
years ago.
teach there.
You taught there?
Really?
When I first moved out to Arizona almost 26 years ago, I taught art and design because I come from an advertising, printing background, and I taught print and prep and all that stuff when things used to go onto paper, and we used to have to shoot plates and many, 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 many eons ago. But yes,
Wow.
I taught it when it was Al Collins College, and they
All
took Al's
right.
name away. Yes.
I was today
What a
years
small
old
world.
when I learned that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved it because for everything that I did know, I actually realized I didn't know a lot because the only method of filmmaking that I knew was my method, and not that it was wrong; it got the
Right.
job done. But there was just so much to learn and explore and to actually do things right. And I'm never afraid to admit this. I used to be afraid to admit it, but as of I'm right now, I'm like I graduated 10 years ago, so whatever. But up to the point of going to film school, a year in, I always shot on auto. I didn't know the settings for the camera or how to set exposure, ISO, shutter speed. None of all of that was foreign to me, and well, I learned in film school.
So there you go.
That's
Mhm.
a rabbit hole though. Like
Yeah, it
all
is
the
quite the rabbit hole.
camera settings and I'm so terrible at all
Yeah.
of it. I don't have the like it takes mental patience.
You don't have that.
Zero.
But admittedly, uh, when they first just threw everything at us, this is what ISO is, this is what shutter speed is, this is what exposure is, the f-stop. I was just sitting there like, broken gears in the head. But much like how I kind of taught myself with the editing, the more and more I did it, the more and more it just became a second nature.
Right.
Nowadays, I'm like, oh, okay, here's the setting, here's the sun's there, and boom,
Right.
So it seems very daunting, but when you take a step back and realize that there's a lot of logic to it, it becomes easy.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's just that it's patient. You have to have
Yeah.
patience to learn. I have no patience to learn, which is why I don't learn things. I don't learn things. Don't make me read and learn things. I don't want to learn things.
She doesn't want
that.
Yeah. Well, so as you do film, you do photography as well. And Harrison has an Instagram page, BAHE Photography, and you can see some of his photography there. Do you want to tell us about some of your background with photography and taking photos?
Yeah. I figured filmmaking was there. I figured I might as well jump into photography. Film school is what really, taught me. Much like how I said I didn't really know any manual settings. I was shooting on auto up until film school. But the photography, it's funny because the photography and filmmaking sort of go hand in hand. Mainly because, and it's funny because I sort of inadvertently taught myself to get the perfect shot through high school because I would have this really nice little point and shoot Kodak camera, and I was in marching band, as you may know, and we did a lot. There were a lot of practices. There were a lot of school trips that we went on. So, and shooting on auto with that thing was taught me pretty much to get the camera and get the angle and shoot. And I feel that sort of fine-tuned my cinematic sensibilities when it came to film, and it also fine-tuned to get that cinematic shot in a photography sense. So, 4 years of that, there's they say that it's what is it called, a cinematic eye, and it just sort of happened on accident. So I like to explain everything I do as a happy accident, to be honest. So, yeah, like I know. I hear I see a lot of comments on YouTube on my videos of like, well, clearly, the director did this shot because he wanted to represent this character's feeling, and I'm just like, no, I just put the camera there. So, so that's sort of those kind of happy accidents I like. But yeah, no, the photography, I truly, honestly attempted to try landscape photography and shooting inanimate objects, but I just thought that was really boring. That doesn't mean like landscape photography isn't important. I think it is, but like for me, I put a subject in there and suddenly, oh, okay, now my pictures have come to life. So I've been doing photography for 7 years with multiple cameras. I have actually traveled across the nation and collaborated with a lot of friends from afar. And up to date, I have collaborated with over 500 people across the United States.
Wow.
So, that's amazing. You've seasoned yourself in a short time.
Certainly so.
Yeah. So do you I want to go back just for a second because of the comments. I love this when you hear artists that say that somebody comments on something that they've done and they're like, oh, I see what you're doing here. And the artist is like, cute. That's nice. Thanks for that. Like, how do you feel about that? Does that kind of tickle your brain a little bit that people are thinking about in those terms, or does it? I mean, it sounds like it surprises you.
Yeah, no, I think I've gotten over the surprise. I think in the early days when I stopped kind of doing because of course, a young person's mind is always filled with incredibly ridiculous ideas. So for me, it was a lot of random action and extreme violence, so not really much for to think about. But when we really started doing more dramatic stuff, I remember we did a film called Requiem, and it was about teen suicide.
Mm.
And even to this day, we still get comments from people saying that they're going through something similar, or that this film has actually helped them. And one of the things that really surprised us was that someone actually did a whole breakdown of the whole movie, and
Wow.
really and not ripped it apart, but what's the word? Really
Dissected it?
went dissected. I was like, it's not digested. No, dissected it, and we were really surprised. Some of the points were on par, but most of it was again a happy accident. So, but we found it pretty awesome, the fact that people can relate to the projects and take something out of it that we didn't intend. That's always a nice thing. But a majority of the time, they always point out our mistakes. At which point I say, "Thanks for noticing or caring enough to find it and point it out." So,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, learn and grow, right?
Learning girl.
yeah,
Yes, that's the theme.
That's the thing.
yeah.
Well, when we talked to Kimberly, who was on, we were talking about a couple weeks ago, who did the photos. We talked a little bit about that cinematic eye, like the photography eye, like having an eye for it. And one of my questions for her was, did you feel like you learned more of your skill, or if you had the eye from it for it? And her answer was that a little of both. Kind of like anything in life, like success is 70% effort but 30% luck, or something like that. That it's kind of similar with
Right.
with a trade like this, in that it's you need kind of both elements. You need the talent, but you also need kind of the work and the research and development into it.
Yes.
So, and you
Mhm.
were talking about landscape versus having subjects. I personally, and again, sucking as a photographer and videographer, and when I try,
Mhm.
it to me, I think it's way harder to have a live being, be it a pet, be it a person,
Mhm.
animal, human. I think that's way harder than landscapes. Like, there's always skill to all of it, and of course, developing a talent. Actually, our first guest on the podcast, John Serlin, he's a photographer.
Right.
Yeah, he has this Corgis, Bacon, and Aspen. But he takes them with him traveling, and he's a storm chaser and takes
Ooh.
these amazing photos. Yeah, of like these giant tornadoes and just crazy wall clouds and things that you've never seen. I mean, they're it's jaw-dropping work. Like, I never
Yes.
take. So I don't want to minimize and say that there's not incredible skill in that. But to me, like, just sucking at it, maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's just people who suck at it like me. But when I'm able to take easier, I'm able to take better photos and even videos of things like landscapes than I am of moving beings. I think it's harder, just
Mhm.
personally.
Yeah, no, the fact that, and it's funny because I think it's opposite for me, because the fact that someone can make, say, for instance, architecture, really awesome architecture, come to life, like as if it is a living being, is a feat that I don't think I could ever do.
Yeah.
So it's easy to shoot a subject because, well, they are living, and even if there is a mistake or they just don't emote properly, there's still those moments within those moments that still come out great. I find that at least I think the word is candid. The
Yeah.
moments where the model is being candid and not posing is my absolute favorite kind of photography, and that's what I always try to implement. Even though they don't, they still pose, and I'm like, okay. But the moments where they don't know I'm shooting are my favorite. And but no, I have. That's why I say landscape photography is important, because it is, at least for me, impossible to make something that isn't alive look alive. So
Oh,
that's mainly where I'm coming from.
Right.
that's a good point. That's why I posed the question, because that's
Hmm.
just obviously my opinion based on poor skill and
Right.
experience.
Exactly.
But as someone with you who has the skill and has the experience to be able to speak intelligently on that, that's that's amazing. I never thought of it like that. But it cracks me up with the candids because when I get my photo taken, I despise my candids because if I pose, I'm like, that one's okay, whatever. But the candids, I'm like, I look like that? Oh, geez. So now when a camera's up, people give me a hard time. They're like, oh, you always have to cheese. I'm like, yeah, because without the cheese, it's bad.
See, and I'm looking at a candid of myself. How obnoxious of me sitting next to you on the desk. And I think that one was.
You were emoting, though. That's what
I was emoting, yeah.
So, viewer, listener, anyone who can't see, Kat is a TEDx speaker. And this photographer caught her in a moment of, in the middle of performing her TED talk. And so, yeah, that's a candid, but it's emoting. It's that emoting that Harrison's talking about.
Yes.
You were pouring your all into it because it's centered around your husband and your loss, and
that's right,
and how you recover. So before I get too off topic, which I'm really good at doing, how it's not too far off topic, but how would you say, do you have any experience in photographing or taking video of pets, animals?
Only once, and I think it's a hilarious story because let me first start by saying that probably because of Indiana Jones, I have severe ophidiophobia. So for viewers who don't know, that is a fear of snakes.
Ah.
Yeah. And probably Anaconda too. Anaconda really did a number on me. But not the song, the movie.
Right.
But the first animal that I ever photographed in a studio setting, a model came to me with the concept. And I was really hesitant to do it because, like I said, I have a really bad fear of snakes. He wanted to bring in a python, his pet python, and he was going to be shirtless and it was going to be really sexy. He was going to have the snake wrapped around him, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Okay,
he was wanting to do a Britney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Long before Britney. Now I can't remember her name. The wife of the Cars lead singer,
Rick Ocasek.
Rick Ocasek's wife.
Which one? He always carried beautiful women, and nobody could figure it out because Rick Ocasek
was not beautiful. But he was married to a supermodel, and
I don't remember her name.
And she did that whole, but she was completely naked, and the snake was strategically wrapped around her.
Was he naked?
No. No, just shirtless.
Just shirtless. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I felt if anything, he was channeling his Salma Hayek from Dusk Till Dawn. So because he was Latino, so it was sort of like, oh, okay, I see a theme happening here. But fortunately for me, I had a really, really long lens, so I stayed as far away as I could. But I learned something incredibly valuable. Snakes don't like flash photography. So. Yeah, so we had to plan around that. We put it on its lowest setting because we realized every time we took a photo, the snake would sort of tense up and constrict our poor model, and he got bit.
That's terrifying.
So it was like, okay, all my greatest fears are coming to life here, but it was great because again, it was a learning experience, and also at the time I was making a film called Lust. And ironically, we needed a snake. So I asked the model if we could use his pet snake in our film. And I found it just as difficult to shoot a snake on film than it was photography because the snake never went where we needed it to go. Because we needed it to come, because it was a dream sequence, the theme of lust and passion being, driven from the original sin. So snake representing the devil, all that jazz. Right. So it was a very simple thing. We just needed the snake to come over. Oh, the camera's reversed, so I point right here. The snake just had to come over the guy's shoulder, and every time there's like a whole hour of us trying to get this snake over the shoulder. So I figured, okay, it's clearly not going to go where we need it to go. So we did a simple trick and put the snake right here, and then pulled the snake back, and I just reversed the footage. So it looks like the snake is coming up. So that is the first and probably last time I'm ever working with an animal. At least a snake.
Yeah, I was gonna say
The
you picked like you had the hardest one. Can you even train a snake? Are they
I don't know.
trainable?
I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
at least like dogs and there's
Dogs are
famous
trainable,
dogs. Rin Tin Tin was a
right?
famous
Hmm.
Hollywood dog.
Yes.
And
Lassie,
Lassie.
all the Lassies.
Um,
Even Flipper. Flipper was a dolphin, and it was
they're
poor.
so intelligent
They
though.
are. They're
And
so
Babe.
intelligent.
Babe,
Babe was
yeah,
very
Babe's a pig,
intelligent.
yeah.
Babe.
P.S. I remember the model's name, Paulina Poroskova.
Oh,
Ah.
Paulina Poroskova. She famously did a piece with a snake.
I wonder if that snake was afraid of the flash photography too. If it's like a snake thing or
Maybe.
It
just
might be a snake thing, or maybe just might be this individual snake's. I didn't
right.
really stick around to find out because, yeah, I was over that snake. Just
Yeah.
not only because it wasn't cooperating, but because
Because it was a
I
snake.
hate I hate snakes, Jock. I hate them. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and you live in the desert
Oh
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. We got a few.
We have lots of snakes. And how does
Hmm.
Digby around the snakes?
Digby has not seen a snake yet. Digby is
Good.
also not snake trained, which frightens me
Yeah, me too.
because of where I live here in the desert.
On a mountain.
On a mountain,
Mhm.
and I have had rattlesnakes in the backyard. I've had gopher snakes here. Gopher's not really going to do much damage, but a rattler will.
No thanks.
Yeah, no thanks. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
so
you watch him.
I watch him, and I have to keep him short leashed
Yeah.
in the summertime.
He's
So,
curious fella.
He's a curious fellow.
So
Yeah.
gosh. So flash photography. So you've worked with snakes. Dogs are a little easier. They're normally not they're normally not afraid of the flash. But some tend to be kind of camera shy and
Hmm.
some aren't. Corgis are typically very social. But what's interesting is like Chuckles here. Chuckles is he's kind of he's a narcissist. He's a publicist. He's a little publicist.
Hmm.
And so if he sees a camera, he's like, oh, it's time for my shot. Okay. But if there's something, a distraction like a ball, he's ball obsessed. Like he won't. So
He is.
when we did our shoot with Mortimer was the one that was like the star. And he was 12 weeks old at the time. So he's a baby. And Kimberly was blown away because she's like, how is this puppy sitting still and paying attention? And she was just eating it up. And you were talking about your ability to just, if you overthought the shot, it was better for you to just point and click, and you got used to what that feels like to get a good shot. That
Hmm.
always floors me with photographers because I've definitely done the just point click whatever, and it's never good. So I've put a lot of
Hmm.
thought into it, and then it's still not really that great. So, but maybe that's the patience thing. But it's just so funny to me because the dogs will react differently.
Yes.
And some of them are afraid of other things that others aren't. Now,
Right.
Chuckles is afraid of things above his head. So every time if the camera goes above his head, he's like, "What is this?" And he starts backing up. But if you bring it down lower to his level, he's like, "Oh, cool.
What is this?
Then he's curious. So, I mean, I would imagine one challenge to taking video or photos of pets is the individual.
Is each individual pet probably, and how used to having photographs they are. So Wigan came to me courtesy of
Yeah, a friend.
and
Yep.
and a friend, yes, and so there are now numerous pictures of Wigan around the house. Wigan is professionally done, and Wigan is quite the ham. If you walk around the house and you see the pictures of him, he is quite the ham, and he's used to getting photographed.
He's not distractible though.
No, he's not distractible.
Digby's distractible. We
Extremely.
did the professional shoot with Digby, and it was oh boy, everybody was worn out.
Yeah.
Everybody was worn out. We even brought a teenager, a friend's son, to help with like the treats to try to keep him something to be behind the cat. So hey, look, try to get him. Even the teenager was like, "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." The young person with all of the. So yeah. Anyway, I don't want to take up all your time, Harrison. You're giving us some great information here.
Hmm.
But I guess what I would ask you, and I know that you've worked with the snake, but I wanted to bring on a professional director and kind of talk about this. And even though that's not really your background with the pets, what do you have advice for somebody who's wanting to get really good video of their pets?
Well, I guess we can speak both to a novice and both a professional, but I think more from a novice point of view, even like 5, 6, 7 years ago, a lot of people would never say this, but considering now that smartphones are becoming just as good, if not sometimes better than some DSLRs out there.
So
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, there is. I mean, unless you are like my mother, who just technology hates her, and you know, there really is absolutely. It's a nearly. I think it's impossible to get bad videos of your pets, especially now we have these phones that just. I mean, it is auto mode, so I mean, I think the challenge for me, at least, if I'm thinking logically here, would be how fast can you get your phone out to get that moment?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, so it's like I got used to just hitting my phone button twice, and that opens up the camera just immediately. So
Okay.
that could be a thing. I think it might be different for other phones, but I have a Google Pixel 5.
Most of them
Uh,
have settings though, so that's good
yeah,
advice though. Quick draw
yeah.
method. Yeah.
And but for a profession, I mean, even just a learning photographer, if you are using like a DSLR, I for me, I just imagine dogs to be very quick, fun animals that are always on the move, always running, and always happy. So I figured for me that just
Especially
automatically
corgis.
screams.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me that automatically screams a high shutter speed, which of
Okay.
course that that should translate. That would mean that the higher the shutter speed, the quicker your shutter will open and close. So let's say, for instance, I typically shoot models at about 1/200th of a second, which translated, that means if it's lower than that, then you're going to get this kind of blurring effect that you kind of see right here, right? When someone's in motion, you'll see
And they
like a
look like
nice
they're possessed. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the higher the shutter speed goes, you'll capture motion in in a sharper way,
And
so you'll be able to
yeah.
see that movement. Yeah.
Okay.
So of course that's tried and true for sports photography. I feel it could be applicable to pet photography,
Okay.
unless your pet's a turtle, then shoot whatever shutter speed you want it
Right.
to be at. But shooting there's shooting pets, oh my goodness. I really think that it is a luck of the draw. Again, a happy accident again, because
Right.
you speak of TikTok, and I love TikTok. I don't know what I was all about 2 years ago, and I said, "What? I'm not going to download TikTok. I'm not a 12-year-old kid."
I
But now
said the
I'm
same thing.
ridiculous. Yeah,
Mhm.
now I'm obsessed with it,
Me too.
and especially on YouTube when you see the pet compilations,
Mhm.
and half of those things they probably didn't even tend to capture those, and they did, and now it's an awesome meme. You know,
Yeah,
my fa-
wonderful.
the most uh, the most iconic image for memes nowadays, and I think you know this, is the Dogecoin dog.
Oh, yeah, everywhere. I was on
Yeah.
a Zoom meeting last week and somebody had that as their virtual background.
So I am well. That one just had to have been timed so perfectly,
Yeah.
because the dog had to be in that exact setting and had to look at the camera and give that look. So you cannot. Yeah, exactly. You cannot pose a dog like that. It has
Nope.
to happen in the moment. So most logical advice is be quick with your camera, be quick with your phone, because those moments are fleeting and you may miss it.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't come from a pet background,
Sure.
unfortunately, but that just kind of sounds like a pretty awesome rule to begin with. The
Yeah.
pets are random and erratic and awesome. So I feel like almost everything they do could be
Yeah.
shootable. So
Right.
I've run
yeah,
out of
always be on
memory.
standby.
Yeah, I've run out of memory space on compute like all my laptops, tablets, any phone I've had. I have all these thumb drives laying around. They're full of videos and photos of my dogs. Not even like great ones, they're ones I've taken. But I'm like, it's precious to
It's
me.
precious. Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
so I take it and
And there you
fill
have it.
them up. But yeah, and I think too, also what I would say, being the novice, expert versus novice, is being patient with the editing, because we were talking about or I was talking about what a time suck editing can be. But one of my favorite accounts to follow on TikTok is Hammy and Olivia. And this guy has these two corgis, and he overdubs their barking with voices, and they're really silly voices, but they're just these different little like mini episodes, like baking with Hammy and Olivia. And this last one, he was tanning, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Honey baked ham, Dad," because they're just so silly, but it's so fun, and it comes together, and it's so entertaining. And they have, I think, tens of thousands of followers, of course, because it's amazing.
Right.
But I always think TikTok has made it where it's easy, but I don't know if this person is editing them somewhere and then condensing it to TikTok or vice versa, because I've done both. But
Yeah.
TikTok makes it easy, but these are really, really good. So I think that he's doing something with them too. So the other is the patience, patience and time it takes to sort of clean it up and piece it together the way you want it to look and feel and sound.
Yeah,
So.
and honestly, just to kind of leave an inspiring message too, is that even 10 years ago, we didn't really have this much access to so much content tools of content creation.
Right.
Like, if you wanted to achieve a cinematic look 10 years ago, you had to buy like a $3,000, $3,500 camera, but nowadays, I mean, it's Hollywood in general too has sort of adapted this. Steven Soderbergh, who directed Traffic, movies like Ocean's 11, shot a whole movie on an iPhone. So, and it was released in cinemas and had a release. So it's like there is no excuse not to be creating content, because almost everything is available to you. Even simple editing tools like TikTok. And rest in peace, Vine. I remember that was really fun to work with back in the day.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot, Apple products come with iMovie.
Right.
It's
that iMovie is insane.
Yeah, there's really no reason not to create this, because there's so much at your fingertips that you wouldn't believe. Like I know that I haven't tried it, but there's an app I think it's for all phones, where you can take manual control of your camera settings through an app. So it's like you can have, so I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing.
I actually have that, and that is on, what kind of camera do I have? I've got
a fancy one.
I have a fancy camera. I don't remember what kind of fancy camera I have. Nikon. I have a Nikon camera. And the only reason why I remember that is the Paul Simon song. So, and yes, instead of having to set up the camera and then have everybody run and take the group picture, I can just have everybody in the group picture. This is the one and only thing I used for. So the Christmas group picture that we have, I can just put it on my on my phone and just click, and there you have it. So I don't have to run.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. So that's awesome too. And this may discourage you, but the app basically would make your phone like that expensive camera. So like you would have control over the manual settings, shutter speed, ISO, whatever, frames per second, especially when you're shooting film on it or video on it. But no, a lot of stuff like that too, but back in the day, I mean, you need to get a self timer, you need to get that little clicker button, but now it's like,
so that was it.
I didn't know you could get an app. Now I'm gonna be looking for something else so I can do that badly, like I do everything else with the cameras. Well, Harrison, thank you so much. I'm going to, again, for those listening, not viewing, I have a banner. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go to Navajo Joe Films and see some of these wonderful films that Harrison makes. And there's also Bahe Photography on Instagram, BAHE Photography on IG. So, Harrison, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your expert advice and lending us your so precious time. We really appreciate it. We hope you have a great evening.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. You have a good night too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, did you learn some things?
I did. I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
Snakes don't like flash
I
photography.
know.
I know. Well,
Kind of blows my mind.
I had mentioned it on the episode that we did. Lions, you cannot have.
Yeah.
You can't have mirrors. So if you're photographing lions, you cannot have mirrors around because they will see their reflection. They are not vampires. They will see their reflection and they believe it's another lion and they will try and attack, because we did have one mirror that wasn't covered in the place that we were photographing.
Oh no.
Yes, and it was a famous lion, Arthur the lion. And for those who are older, if you ever saw the old Dreyfus commercials on TV, very old Dreyfus commercials, there is a lion walking through the stock market area in Lower Manhattan. And that lion is the one that I had the opportunity to work with.
Cool.
And he's also the Konica lion. So the old Konica camera ads, magazine ads, that was the lion.
And you
Arthur.
had a mirror.
And yeah, it
Oops.
wasn't my fault. It was the Garden City Hotel. So oops.
Didn't think about that.
No.
Well, with corgis, usually they just stop and admire themselves.
They do stop and admire themselves.
That's what Mortimer does. He will stop and look at himself, and then he'll start kissing it. That's how much he's impressed with his own appearance. He is cute, though.
He is adorable.
Yeah.
My nephew.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are here for you every Thursday on the Corgi Town USA podcast. Please like, subscribe, share. We need all the help we can get. We like to support small businesses by having them on the podcast. And so the more that you share that helps them. We also contribute to a couple of charitable organizations, Bandits Band-Aid, Shade Out DM. Those are all important organizations, and we try to get that word out too. So anything that you like and subscribe, not only are you supporting a small business, but you're also supporting some other small businesses and charitable efforts. We hope that you enjoy this, and we'll see you next week. Cat, Candy, Chuckles, Digby Wicked, signing out, Corgi Town USA.
Bye.